Making games is fucking hard, but it's also the coolest job in the world, and often the things worth doing are also the most difficult ones to do. Hi everybody, my name is Kabir and I'm an indie game developer, and in this devlog video, I want to go over the importance of planning. If you're feeling burnt out, take a week off and plan out your project. Most burnouts happen either from unrealistic expectations, lack of breaks, or more commonly, lack of planning. Without direction, it's easy to lose sight of where you're going, and without a clear vision, if you don't have a goal, it'll be much harder to stay motivated. So remove as many uncertain variables as possible and make your roadmaps as concrete as you can, because if you have a clear path in front of you, it'll be much harder to deviate from that path and much easier to follow it. I spent the entirety of this last week planning. I'm a huge fan of digital workspaces since they allow you to do things that the physical world can't, and I love the feeling of clicking on a Trello card to look at a checklist. Looking back, it's not a surprise that I was feeling unmotivated and pressured because my Trello board reflected my mental state. It was a mess. Earlier, I had all my design notes about each game system in separate Word documents. Now, every programmer knows the importance of readability in code, and I think that design notes that are readable and understandable at a glance are equally, if not more important, for a game developer. So I looked back at a tool that another game dev YouTuber that I really respect, Blackthorn Prod, had mentioned in one of his earlier videos, and the tool was called Milanote. I laid out the core loop of my game in its simplest form. I created boards with all the systems that really put the scale of this project into perspective. But seeing it laid out like that made it finite. The game wasn't this giant, unfathomable, infinite task that I had to tackle anymore. It was a list of interactable systems that I had to implement. That seemed much more doable. So back in Trello, I created a label for every system, every mechanic, and every aspect, that is art, code, sound, etc., that I could classify tasks into. This made reorganization a lot easier and cleaned up the list a lot as well. And it was much simpler to add tasks and classify them. And this made me enthusiastic to actually work because I knew what I wanted to work towards because I had laid out the tasks that I needed to do. As a solo developer, I feel, at least in my experience, it's much easier to fall into the trap of I'm not going to plan anything, I know exactly what I'm going to do, I run this project, therefore I know what needs to be done. Now, a lot of people have talked about planning out your day when you wake up, and I was skeptical, although I got the logic behind it. I had tried it, but I hadn't really stuck to it, and I feel that it's actually much more important and a very underrated tip, because once you know exactly what you have to do in the day, you just get it done. There's no mucking about. You don't necessarily have to spend energy later in the day when you have less of it to try to figure out what should I do now. You look at your list, you see a task, and you finish it. If you run out of tasks, congrats, you've done what you needed for the day and your work is done. So having a finite list of tasks that you need to accomplish during the day is extremely important, I feel, and it really put me right on track to make consistent progress on this project. You know why some Kickstarters in the world have succeeded? It's not only because they have a great idea or product, but also because they have a roadmap that was actually achievable and transparent. That's what inspires customers and makes them trust you, a solid plan. Now flip the script. What if you were the customer? Why would you trust yourself to be able to complete your project? That right there is the problem. The more you have planned, the easier it is to have the drive to execute that plan. Now that said, your plan could change completely. Game dev is a very iterative process, and something that might work now may not work in the future, especially after adding or removing things that were connected to it. So it's extremely important to make your plan in such a way that it's not set in stone and that you can make changes to it as you go on, because that will be extremely useful and won't put you off track for too long, though it might cause deviations, and that is to be expected. It's part of the creative process. Maybe you execute some of a plan and you realize that what you're making isn't fun enough or doesn't fit, and you can account for that and then change it. Remember, great designers make great games, but it takes an even greater project manager to finish a game, and you only ever play a game that's finished. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.